The Secret Empire of Debt. How Money Became a Weapon. For centuries, money was more than a means of exchange. It was a measure of trust, a symbol of stability, and the bedrock of civilizations. Kings minted coins to assert sovereignty. Merchants extended credit to fuel commerce, and nations hoarded gold to secure their place in the world. Yet, what if the very instrument designed to facilitate prosperity could also become a tool of control, manipulation, and silent conquest? This is the story of how debt transformed from a mundane financial instrument into a weapon of global power. The concept of debt is ancient. In Mesopotamia, as early as 2000 BCE, kings lent grain to farmers, who in turn promised to repay with interest. Similar practices appeared in ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome. But debt in these early civilizations was largely local. It was about survival, commerce, and community. The real transformation began during the Renaissance, when banking families like the Medicis discovered the power of leverage. Lending to monarchs became more than a business, it became influence. By offering credit to kings and princes, banks could dictate political decisions without firing a single arrow. The seeds of modern financial imperialism were sown. By the 17th century, governments had begun to formalize debt on a massive scale. England pioneered the concept of national debt through the establishment of the Bank of England in 1694, borrowing money to fund wars. The idea was simple but revolutionary. A government could raise enormous sums without raising taxes immediately. Yet this borrowing came with strings attached. Creditors gained leverage over nations, often dictating policy indirectly through the threat of financial collapse. This model spread across Europe and eventually the globe. Debt was no longer just a personal or local affair. It became a strategic instrument of national power. Countries that controlled credit controlled politics. Debt became a weapon. The world wars of the 20th century introduced unprecedented scales of borrowing. Nations borrowed billions to fund armies, weapons, and reconstruction. But the aftermath revealed an even darker side. Through institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, wealthy nations gained tools to impose economic policies on struggling countries under the guise of aid. Loans came with conditions: privatization, austerity, structural reforms. Countries became indebted not only to money, but to ideology, policy, and control. Developing nations often found themselves trapped in a cycle of debt repayment and dependency. The promise of growth was replaced with the reality of financial servitude. Debt had evolved from a necessity into a mechanism of geopolitical domination. Today, debt permeates every layer of life. Student loans, mortgages, credit cards, and corporate bonds bind individuals and companies alike. Sovereign debt continues to shape international relations, while financial instruments like derivatives and credit default swaps turn intangible numbers into powerful levers of influence. Large corporations and financial institutions wield debt like a weapon. They can destabilize markets, influence governments, and manipulate entire economies without ever declaring war. The rules have changed. Wars are fought not just on battlefields, but in ledgers, spreadsheets, and interest rates. The empire of debt is invisible, yet omnipresent. Unlike armies and navies, it doesn't occupy territory, but it conquers nonetheless. Its citizens are nations and individuals alike, bound by invisible chains of obligation. To understand modern power, one must look not only at politics and military might, but at finance, where money itself has become a weapon. In a world dominated by debt, survival depends on awareness, strategy, and the courage to question the structures that bind us. Money was never neutral. It has always carried the power to create, destroy, and control. Today, as we navigate an economy saturated with credit and obligations, We are witnessing the continuation of an empire built not on swords or cannons, but on the invisible, relentless force of debt.